webinar. Today, we are doing a presentation on the Ignition platform here, Ignition by Inductive Automation. So I'll be largely giving the demonstration of Ignition today. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll make sure that folks can see this. Okay, perfect. So let me introduce myself. My name is Travis Cox. I am the co-director of sales engineering for Inductive Automation. I've been with Inductive Automation since the very beginning. I worked with the owner on the integration side of the business before started the software side, and have worn many hats over the years. Currently in sales engineering, we are the solution architects. We help customers and partners with being able to apply best practices and figure out the right architecture, and of course, get into any of those technical details. So I'm happy to be here with everybody today, and looking forward to being able to show you guys Ignition and answer any questions that you have. So we're here to talk about Ignition. Ignition is our software platform. So Inductive Automation is purely a software supplier, and our product is Ignition, which is a development industrial application development platform where you can build any kind of application. So the types of things that you could do with Ignition, typically the most common use cases are SCADA and HMI. But of course, you can build MES applications, IIoT applications, purely alarming solutions, reporting solutions, mobile solutions, and of course, we can go anywhere from a local HMI to a full enterprise solution and everywhere in between. So as a development toolkit, you can really build anything. The sky's the limit. So our motto is kind of, if you can dream it, you can do it with Ignition. Some of the key important tenets of Ignition is first and foremost the licensing model. It is unlimited. So we sell Ignition by the server license, and that gives you unlimited tags, screens, clients, projects, device connections, you name it. It is completely unlimited. The only limitation that will be there is, of course, hardware. There's only so much that we can do on a single server, but the license is fundamentally unlimited so that you can continue to innovate, add more to that application as you go forward. It is a server-centric model, so you install Ignition on a central server, and that could be a desktop, a high-grade server, it could be a virtual machine, and from there you can connect to all your sources of data, you can build out your application, and then you can launch the application or the client anywhere within your network to see that data. It is completely modular design, so Ignition, you can think of the platform much like your phone's a platform where you can go to the App Store, you can download and find new apps, and you can install them, and you can take advantage of that functionality. The same thing's true with the Ignition platform. We call those features that you can bring in modules you can plug into the platform. And so that allows you to pick and choose the functions you want, and it allows us to have a platform that we can scale as we go into the future, so we can add more functionality very easily. Ignition, it's really important that Ignition is built on open standard technologies. We do not want to have anything proprietary or lock you into Ignition in any way. We want it to be able to, we want you to be able to get access to your data, want you to be able to be interoperable with other systems, and to fundamentally, have a platform that you can not only solve the challenge you have now, but be able to continue solving challenges as you go into the future. And Ignition is completely cross-platform, so you can run any flavor of Windows, Linux, or Mac, and you can view the client on any device, any modern device with a modern browser, smartphone or tablet. You can access the information, and we'll be taking a look at that here today. One of the things that's really important, the reason Ignition can do so many different things is because it can connect to really any kind of data, and we'll show that here in the next slide. But it's really the rapid development and deployment platform, and it has a universal designer that is built into that comes with the product that allows you to go and build out these amazing applications. So as I mentioned, Ignition can connect to a lot of different sources of data. We have connectivity directly to PLCs, so we can connect to any flavor of So we can connect to a Modbus device. We can connect to Allen Bradley, Siemens, Omron, DMP3, BACnet, We have Opto22 Snappack and a whole bunch of drivers that are just built natively into Ignition, and they're also cross-platform on there. So it allows us to connect to a wide source, a wide range of PLCs. Now, we standardize on OPC. We have a built-in OPC UA server in Ignition. And we're both a server and a UA client, as well as an OPC DA client. So we can also bring data in from third-party OPC servers. So we can literally connect to any PLC that's out there because of our native drivers and because of OPC. Now we can take that data and we can do a lot with it. As an example, we can take that and bring it to a SQL database of your choosing. So our historian logs data to could be MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, any database that you'd like. You can install that database, connect Ignition to it, and we can really use it fully. Not only to store data there, but we can query information, bring it back on screens. We can connect to LIMS devices, barcode scanners, and scales. We can parse files into Ignition. We can connect out to third-party systems like other MES or ERP systems, and we typically do that through web services, either a REST or a SOAP-based API. We also can work with MQTT, and this is a more modern pub/sub protocol used for IIoT, especially for delivering information to the cloud. And we have full support for MQTT within Ignition. So we can connect to these different sources of data. We can move data around between all of these. We have integration with cloud services, all the major cloud services like Azure, AWS, IBM Cloud, and Google Cloud, so that you can take data you have on premise and deliver it to the cloud. And we can, again, move the information around, and then we could give that provide that data to people with any display. So it could be a touch panel you have on the line, could be any PC, could be a modern mobile device, a smartphone or tablet, could be a smart TV. We can get that data out and have people get access to the information. And we'll be seeing that here today with the live demonstration. So as I mentioned before, Ignition is a modular platform. So the platform itself has a lot of core functionality that's built into it. So things like the tag system, connecting to databases, connecting to OPC, authentication, has the development environment built into it, and much more. The idea is that the modules are the specific functionality that you plug into the platform that you can take advantage of. And the reason we have a modular design really is for two reasons. One is we want you to be able to pick and choose the functions that you require. So if you don't want everything, you can just get the individual pieces, with everything being unlimited and very cost effective. The second reason is that, again, we can't predict the future. We need to have a platform that we can scale, that we can add on to as we go into the future. And by having a modular design, it's a very common paradigm within the IT world. Here within the OT world, we can easily introduce new modules and new technology into the platform very, very easily. But just a quick highlight of some of the modules that we have, looking at our this orange box is our core modules. As I mentioned, all the drivers to the different PLCs that we have built into Ignition, and of course the OPC connectivity. We have the historian to log data to any SQL database. We also have a transaction manager to log contextual data, as well as to synchronize PLCs and databases, or even PLCs and PLCs. We have logic engines that you can build into Ignition through sequential function charts. We can basically make Ignition both a REST consumer and a producer of APIs. We can work with alarms and configure, in the platform, we can configure status and history, but we can also notify people through email, SMS, and voice, all two-way, and then you can acknowledge from those sources. We have great visualization, both in a desktop form and in a pure web native HTML form that I will be showing you here today, as well as, of course, the ability to do PDF reports. So you can do compliance reports or any formatted PDF report that you can view on screen, but more importantly, have scheduled automatically scheduled to be printed, emailed, saved, FTP'd, you name it. So you get a lot of options with what you can do with that core layer. Now, we also have a couple of partners that bring on vertical expertise. First is CirrusLink. They provide the IIoT functionality, in particular with the MQTT modules. So being able to work with MQTT, with that pub/sub protocol, both in being able to send data to an MQTT server, as well as to be able to subscribe to data and bring it into Ignition and do a lot with it. They also have the cloud connectivity, so all the injector modules to go into AWS or Azure or Google or IBM. As the example, with AWS, we can bring data into Kinesis Streams or DynamoDB, as well as we can go into their IoT Sitewise service. With Azure, we can go into IoT Hub or Event Hubs, and again, allowing you to really take that data and go further within the cloud environment. Our other partner, Sevasoft, they bring on the MES expertise. So things like OE downtime, track and trace, SBC or quality, rest speed changeover, connectivity to SAP, a business connector, which is an ETL tool. There's a lot of functions that they bring. The idea, again, is that you can pick and choose the modules you want, take that platform, install it on a server, and ultimately build out your application, whatever kind of application you would like to use. Now, we have functionality both in terms of a standard central server, that's the typical deployment, but we also have edge computing projects where you can deploy Ignition to the edge of the network in a cost-effective, it's very much optimized for that to solve problems at the edge of the network. For example, being able to do store and forward and bring data up to an enterprise very efficiently, as well as to have a local HMI or even provide some compute at the edge. So Ignition has a lot of functionality. I want to kind of give you that sense of what's possible. But as simply as you can go and purchase the modules that you want. It's an unlimited license, unlimited tag screens, clients, unlimited use of these modules, and you can go in there and you can start building out the systems that you want. And once you have that platform in place, you can continue adding on to it as you go into the future. So it's really simple to get Ignition up and running and deployed, and we're going to show that here today. All we got to do is simply install Ignition on a central machine, on a central server. And from there, we connect to our PLCs and bring in that data. We can connect to a database so we can log data or query information, and we can connect to any other source of data that we might have. Ultimately, we build out the application, and we can launch that application on our different devices. So we're going to see that entire process here today and how that works. It's a really quick, easy install of Ignition, very easy to get going as well in terms of designing and building out a system. And all you got to do is simply go to our website, and let me bring this up here. You go to our website. This is inductiveautomation.com. And on the website, there's a download link in the top right. You can go over there and you can download Ignition, and you can easily get it up and running on your machine. It takes just less than a couple of minutes to get it installed, and it comes in a 2-hour trial period. So you can fully evaluate Ignition, play with every feature that's there. It just stops every 2 hours. You can press a reset button, and you can try again for another 2 hours. So it's really a great way to develop a proof of concept, to really prove out the different features that Ignition brings to the table. Now, we have a lot of really great resources up here on the website as well while we're here. Not only can you download the software, we have a great inductive university. This is an online video library that has over 700 videos on how to do things on the Ignition platform. So how to develop with it, things that are very basic to things that are more complex. And they're very short videos to really help you understand how to use Ignition and how to take advantage of these different modules. Another resource we have is the Ignition Exchange. I'll be showing this here today, but the Ignition Exchange is an online community resource tool where people that are building in Ignition can share their resources publicly with others that you can take advantage of, bring it into your system, and it's really a nice, fast way to get more features added to your system. As Ignition's development toolkit, it does nothing by default. You go in there, you make it, do all the amazing things that you want. Under the support area, we have our documentation, and we have our user manual and our forum, which is a very lively online forum where you can discuss with the community and how to do things and challenges that you've been faced with there. And we have great resources. If you want to see how other people are doing what they're doing with Ignition, there's lots of good case studies and customer projects that have been highlighted on here, as well as, of course, webinars and that Inductive Automation has done. So I encourage you all to take a look at this. Finally, we do have our pricing on the website. It's very clear in terms of we want to be very transparent in terms of what the cost is. With that licensing model being unlimited, again, we want to be very, very simple. Our mantra is really making HMI, SCADA, and these kind of systems easy, fun, and affordable, right? So it's we want you to innovate and build the applications and the systems that you need. Okay, so with that, let's get into the demonstration portion here. Hopefully that was a good introduction of the product. For the demonstration, there's two parts of this. The first part is we do have an online demo project that is available for people to take a look at some of the features of Ignition without having to install it and see it and play with it on their own machine. So we have if I go to a new tab here at demo.inductiveautomation.com, if you go there, this is our online demo. So what we did is we already built out an Ignition server that happens to be running in the cloud. It's running in Amazon EC2, and we've connected to PLCs. We've built out an application, and that's what we're seeing here. So we are a user who is launching the client part of this application. And we developed this project to kind of showcase the various features of Ignition, as well as have a couple of vertical applications that show you how to do things in these different arenas. So going to the features, under the real-time status control is a very common thing that people want to do with the Ignition, is be able to see the status of machines and be able to control that. Here's a couple examples. Here's a high-performance HMI example where we can change set points, turn things on or off, see that process. We have a more traditional example with graphics here. With these, we have over 4,000 industrial graphics that you can choose from, and a little dashboard example here. One thing that's really important to note with Ignition is with the visualizations that we built this pure web visualization to be mobile responsive. So if I were viewing this on a desktop, I have more real estate. But if I'm on a phone, I don't have as much, it's a much smaller size. I want it to be optimized for that medium. And we have it where you can build one project that will automatically be optimized for the medium that you're viewing it on. So here, if I look at a phone, I can see the same relevant data, but it's in a vertical fashion here, and I can still do the same kind of control that we want to do. So real easy to have one application that we can deliver to people in different ways. And again, we're going to be seeing this firsthand here today. Speaking of mobility of phones and tablets, as I mentioned, we have native integration with iOS and Android. We have apps for that. And the reason for the apps is so you can get access to the phone sensors. So things like GPS, so you can use it for geofencing or maybe switching the application as you walk around your plant. You have the camera, so we can take pictures for troubleshooting, or we can scan barcodes to get more context, get more information out of the system. The accelerometer, NFC, Bluetooth Low Energy, all sorts of things are possible with leveraging the native apps. Okay, so that's real-time status control and the ability to really leverage any kind of browser, any kind of device that you have out there. The second piece here is history, and we're going to show this again today, but this is the ability to take data, log it historically to that SQL database, and be able to bring up trends, time series charts or tables, and export data out, do some calculations on that. And we'll go into this in a lot more detail as well. Third would be alarming, so that we can configure alarms on tags, so we can see the current state of these alarms, as well as we can log history of that, and again do notification through email, SMS, or voice. And we'll be going into this into more detail, and I'll be showing an example of how we can bring in this alarm analysis dashboard, so I can see the alarms that have occurred. See them, how they're broken out by hour, the frequency, the duration, all that information we can get at a glance. So there's lots of other areas that we can go into in here, and you can go and take a look at reports and the different kind of examples of PDF or formatted reports that you can do, from basic ones to more compliance reports on this, and so you can really see what that looks like, as well as we have the ability to just interface with databases and be a database front end on that. So I can create forms and enter in data on there, as well as, of course, we can tap into web services, and we can bring in data from third-party systems into Ignition or vice versa. So a lot of functionality that Ignition can bring. This just really scratches the surface of the possibilities. And again, we're going to show how this gets going. And on the demo app side, this is the vertical applications that we have. Just a couple of them, just to kind of see what it looks like as a completed example. So, like for example, this water wastewater is a completed sort of mini water wastewater application where you can see a dashboard. I can then drill into the filters here, go to the overview, and you can see what this looks like from from that standpoint. So it gives you a sense of some of the, what it could look like, what it could be in your environment. So that's our demo application. Again, we already had this up and running. We already had it built out, and it was something that we did ahead of time. All the development of this can be exported, so you can see how it was built. So you can take advantage and bring in parts that you of here that you like into your applications. Again, as a development toolkit, you can build anything you want with Ignition. That's really what I want to show you here in the second part of this demo, is that I've already downloaded Ignition. I have it on my desktop. So here is the Ignition 8.1.5 installer, and I'm going to install Ignition on my machine, and we're going to go through a configuration. We'll show you how this works. Very, very simple to get it installed, very, very simple to get it up and running and configured. So let's go ahead and run through the installation. The installation here, as I mentioned, just takes a couple of minutes. So I'm installing this here on my desktop, and I'm turning my desktop essentially into an Ignition server. Once we have it installed there, we can, again, connect all the sources of data. We can build the application out, and then we can have anybody launch the application so they can see, the data that we're bringing in. So very, very simple. Okay, so let's just go through a standard install. We'll just do the typical installation where I just chose the location. I chose the Windows service, so Ignition does run as a service on Windows or Linux. Very, very simple there, and it is always running there on that server. We call that the Ignition gateway. And once this piece is done, it's actually going to open my browser for me, and it will point me to a web interface. We do all the management of Ignition through the web interface. So we open any browser we want, and we type in the IP address or the host name of that server, and we can go and launch the application, or if we're a developer, we can go and develop the application. So we'll see that here in just a moment. Okay, so Ignition's now installed, and it's going to start up here. And that's it. It's just now installed. What we're going to do is go through the commissioning. So this is where you could choose the edition of Ignition. We do have 3 different editions of Ignition. Our standard Ignition server here is just the typical one that is completely unlimited, unencumbered. We have our Ignition Edge, which is suited for edge of network installations, as I mentioned before. And we also have a free version called the Maker Edition for personal use. So non-commercial, you could use it for yourself at home for home automation. Students use it to learn Ignition within educational facilities, and it really helps them. It's the same thing. The same Ignition code base just happens to be free for personal use there. So we're going to choose the central one, the Ignition, and I'm going to go ahead and just simply put in my root credentials. So I need to have a user that is the root user. Go next, and we can set up the ports for Ignition. We run Ignition on HTTP and HTTPS, and you can set what you want those ports to be. And of course, you can secure Ignition, and I'll be showing an example of that here in just a moment as well. But this part is now, that's it. We've done the commissioning. It's now starting up. And once this piece is done, it's going to bring us to what we call the Ignition Gateway web interface. And that's our entry into Ignition. That's where we can do everything. Launch the applications to, of course, going to development environment. Just give us a couple more seconds here for that. But you would have seen the entire installation procedure. So you could do this on your machine. It's easily can be installed on your laptop or your desktop. You can go and, again, download it and play around with it. It can coexist with other applications you have on there. Very, very simple with that. Okay, just a couple more seconds. There we go. So Ignition is now up and running on my machine. Now, for those of you who are going to play with Ignition, there is a quick start that we have, and you can enable the quick start. And what this does is it provides, I'm going to go ahead and do so and put in my credentials that I used. And it provides a sample application. It creates a device simulator. It adds tags for you. It adds the historian. It does a lot of things. And it also provides some videos on how to get going with Ignition. So it's kind of your, the beginner's guide to how to get going, how to explore. I'm going to show you all this process here in just a moment. But it's a great way to get started. And once we have it, it's an application. So if I go to on this home section, if I go down here to view the projects, then I have a sample quick start project. I can launch this project as a client, and I can see it basically shows you all the different features from different kinds of applications to the different features that the perspective module, which is the pure web visualization, brings to the table. It shows different layout strategies and how you can do mobile responsive design. And it shows you examples of all the different components that we have in the system. So you can see different examples of, like, for example, here's the gauge, all the different ways you can leverage the gauge or the simple gauge on there. Or maybe you want to look at, how LED displays work, or, icons and various things. You can really take a look at it, and it dives in deep into how, Ignition and perspective really works. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how this goes from scratch. So we're going to build out a system from scratch. So I'm going to do this, though, on a cloud environment. So rather than doing it in my local system, I want to do it in a cloud environment. I already have Ignition up and running in the cloud, and I have a nice domain name, secure.io, to get to it, because I want you guys to be able to follow along with me as we do this. As you can see, this server is running under HTTPS, and we have a certificate, and I happen to use a Let's Encrypt certificate on here, so it is completely encrypted in terms of the communication to that Ignition server. So what we're going to do is go into the configuration. Once we have it up and running, and you notice on my local machine, I'm running in that 2-hour trial period, so you can evaluate every piece of Ignition in that 2 hours. But over here, I'm going to go ahead and go in the configuration section. We'll log in, and this is where we put our credentials. And with that, this is where we can make all the initial connections. So first and foremost, we can connect to devices, and we can do that through OPC. We have a built-in OPC UA server in Ignition. We can also connect to any third-party OPC server through UA or through COM. With our OPC server, we have native drivers, as I mentioned, to all the different PLCs. I can simply go in here, select a driver, go next, put in the IP address and the name of that device, and we would have it connected. Real simple. So I'm going to use a simulator, a programmable device simulator that we have, and I'll do 2 of these. So I'll create one called simulator, and I'll go and edit that program. We have a generic program that we can load, and it has a bunch of ramps and sine values and realistic values that we can work with. I'll also create one more simulator, which is a more realistic one that is called dairy, and it is going to use our dairy simulation. And the reason for this is it has nice objects that we can use, so motors and pumps and things like that we can bring in. So I've got 2 PLCs that I'm connected to. I can, of course, connect to many, many more using those drivers. Really, really simple to do so. And again, there's no limitations, right? You can add as many as you want. Once we have that, we can do real-time status control, history. Real-time status control, if we want to do history, we connect up to a SQL database. So for that, we're going to go over here, databases, connections. I'll connect up to a MySQL database that I have installed on the same machine. So I'm going to call it MySQL. It's on that machine. Database is called Ignition. And the user, put that in. And now I've got a valid database connection. And it's a blank database. We will create all the tables. We'll log all the data. We'll do all that work for you. Actually, there's a lot of other areas in here that we can go in the configuration. I'll come back and do some more of this as we go forward. But now we're ready to actually go over here, get the designer, and we can, start building out our system. The designer is where we spend the bulk of our time. So I already have that downloaded. So I'm going to go ahead and run it here on my machine. And the designer is a launcher, so you can connect to any kinds of Ignition servers you happen to have out there. I could connect to my local machine one. I can also connect to this secure IO. I'm going to go ahead and open that one. So we're going to open the designer from that cloud server. And again, the designer is where we spend the bulk of our development. It comes with the system. It's free. It supports concurrent development. We can have multiple people working on the same projects at the same time. Really nice for that collaboration. within these projects, and it's a unified designer. So all the modules that we have in Ignition, they just contribute more areas in the designer that we can configure. So it makes it really, really easy, to launch the designer from the server. And if I had a brand new operator comes in, or a developer, have their own laptop, they can simply just type in the IP address of the server. They can go download the designer, launch it. There's no licensing to worry about, none of that stuff. It pulls all the configuration from that server. And we can easily, again, save and deploy it back. So it makes it really, really easy from that development side to get your project up and running. So here it's almost downloaded, and then it will we'll go ahead and run it. Okay. So this is going to be the fun part. This is where we get to actually start building. So I'm going to go ahead and put my password in. And I don't have any projects yet. So I'm going to create a brand new project, and I'm going to call it demo. And with that, I'm going to use one of our project templates. So down here at the bottom, I'm going to use the perspective menu navigation. So it's a template that has it's a project that's already, the skeletons of it, it already has some navigation ready to go for me. So it makes it really fast in getting up and running. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. And then bring it over here. All right, so here's the designer, and we're gonna do quite a few things within the designer. But before we do that, let's go back to this homepage, because we do have a project that we can launch as a client. So if I go over here to that view projects, I've created now a new one called demo. So for all of you, if you want to follow along in this part, you can simply just go into your browser, and I'm going to put a chat that's going to send to everybody here. And you can simply put in this URL, which is secure.ia.io. And what that's going to do is going to bring you directly to this project. So we're going to launch that project. So we can have as many people as we want launching this there. Now, just so we can see, if I go here to the status page, let's see how many people are actually launching it. I'm going to go over to our perspective sessions here, and you can start seeing that I've got 8 sessions, 10, right? So it's going to start increasing. With the license being unlimited, it allows people just to continuously go in there, right? Add and add as many clients as we want. We can have hundreds of people looking at this data at the same time within the server. And you're seeing this basic application that I have right now. So we start with the skeleton project. This is where we have just a couple of screens, and we're going to add more to it as we go here. So I'm glad people are launching it so you can see it. So let's go over here to designer. The first thing we'll do, if I look under the screens, there is this home screen that that we saw there, right? And this is the fun part. Let's say if you guys are on the home screen, let me say I want to delete this label. Do something very basic, right? So I make a change to the screen. I'm going to go ahead and save it, and we're going to push that change out to everybody. So you should have seen that update on your side be instant right there. So this is the deployment model. So we can make lots of changes, add lots of new things, add new projects, and we can easily get that make it available to people. Now let's just do something a little bit more fun. Let's create some tags. Let's go over here. I'm going to browse our devices, and there is our dairy and our simulator. I'm going to take all of these, the simulation ones, bring them over, and bring them in as tags. And you'll see, once I do that, I can start seeing the live values of these tags right away. And I can start doing a lot with it. So say I want to take this ramp, drag it on the screen, build a tank. This one here, put it as an LED display. I could drag another one over here as an LED display. Let's do this one as a simple gauge, let's say. That's the status. Maybe I want to do some control as well. Maybe I want to take this as a toggle switch, or I want to take an integer as a slider. Maybe I'm going to just go over here to the right and search for a numeric text field, drag it over, drag the tag over to the value property of the numeric text field, make it bidirectional so we can write back to it, change set points. Real easy to do that. Maybe I want to do a multi-state button here for like an HOA. And let's take this one and drag it over to the control and indicator properties. I'll make the control bidirectional. Let's also put on a motor graphic here, right? So I'm just throwing a lot of different components, and you can really do it however you want. But I'm going to drag that over to the state. And because it's an integer and the state of the motor is a string, we're going to do a transform. We're going to map it from a number to a color. So we're going to go 0, 1, 2, or number to a state, excuse me. So stopped, running, and faulted. And so there we go. Bring this over here. I'll change the states to match. So I'll say this is faulted, and this is stopped. And last one, this is running. Right, so you can see I'm just building out the applications. Now I've got a screen that's got some status and control elements. I'm going to go ahead and save it, and that should be pushed out to everybody as well. And for the fun of this too, I'm going to put a label on the screen where we can see how many sessions are actually being launched out there. Well, I'll come back and do that in a minute. So anyways, we put that change out there. So now you guys can interact with it and change it. You see it update on my side, right? We're all able to interact with the same application. Right now, of course, there's no security in the application. It's public. We're allowing anybody to read, write. Obviously, there's plenty of security built into Ignition where you can lock things down, require authentication, all of that. But this is a great way to kind of show how we can get really started with all that. Okay, so that's some of the basics of that. Now, what I wanted to mention is that not only can we build straight tags, we can build objects and reuse objects over and over again. So I'm going to quickly show you an example of this, where I'm going to actually go in here and browse again the OPC server and see there's our dairy. And here's overview, and I've got 8 motors. The motors are the same. They have amps and HOA, 2 tags. So I'm going to drag these over, create a type out of it, and I'm going to build this object that I can. I can define it in one place, right? And I'll have a parameter for the object that is going to be the motor number. And we're going to go ahead and use that over here. So on the OPC item path, rather than hard coding the 1, I'm going to bring in that motor number parameter. So again, I can create this sort of template of these tags. And I'll show you why we do this in just a moment. So to do that for both of them, let's go over here to our tags. I'm going to create a folder for our tags. I'm going to call it motors. And in there, we're going to add multiple instances of that motor UDT. So I'm going to go 1 to 8, and here 1-8 as well. And so now I've got 8 of these motors that I've defined, and they have the same structure, right? So you can see their values are coming through. It's working. The parameters are different for each one of these, but I've got them coming in. And the reason, let me change this one to 1 so you can see, of course, that is these 3 will be different here. And so the reason we do this is that if I want to make a modification, I go here to the definition and do it one place. So I can go in here and add, for example, let's add a memory tag. That is the motor name, let's say, and we'll let it be motor number. And then maybe I want to go to the amps and the HOA, and I want to log history. So I can actually simply go in, turn on history. It's the first time we're seeing this here now, where I can log that to the MySQL database. Now history is turned on. So I've done a couple of things, and so you can see these tags. All the tags for amps and HOA are now logging all of those instances. The motor name now exists in there. Really quick and easy to do that. So UDTs make it really nice to develop that object, all the configurations in one place. And so if somebody wants to add something new, they don't have to worry about the configuration. Just add a new instance. I'm going to go and add history to a bunch of other tags as well. So let's go over here to these realistic values, add history to those on that, and maybe to the writable. I'll add a alarm to the writable. So I'll go and put an alarm on here. I'll call this fault. And this I can say this is machine fault. And here are some notes. And I'll make it an alarm when the value goes to 1. Of course, many conditions you can do for when it goes into alarm. We're going to go ahead and press OK. And so now I've got the alarm configured on there. So we've done quite a few things. Last thing I want to do here is I'm going to make a motor template. So we're going to make a motor view that I can templatize. We're going to add a parameter, which is the motor. And this is going to be a tag path, basically. So I'm going to put this in as the default. So we're going to make this smaller. Let's put a label up here at the top. And we can, of course, make these things look really nice. I'm just gonna throw some things on here. Put a motor graphic, and then put an LED display on here for these different things. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bind the text to a tag, but I'm gonna do indirect tag, so I can actually do indirect binding, so I can get to the motor name with the parameter that I pass into the view. So I'm kind of going here quick so you can see an example of how we can do this object-oriented design. So I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to copy that binding. We're going to do it down here on the LED, paste it, but I don't want the name. I want, in this case, the amps. And we're going to do the same thing on the state. We're going to paste the binding, but instead it's going to be the HOA. And one more time, we'll do the transform, the map here. So 0, 1, 2 is stopped running and faulted. Okay, so now that's there. Really built this out, and what I wanted to do is actually we'll define a drop target. So we'll say that whenever I drop the motor UDT, I'm going to basically set that parameter for us automatically. And what that allows me to do is really quick drag and drop. So I can drag motor on here and just select that template really easy. I'll add all three of them in here. And so there we go. I've got that. If I want to make a change, let's say, oops, I wanted to put a label over here for the amps, I can certainly do so. And then come back here, you'll see that all of those are now changed. If I want to deploy that, I save it. Now all of you should get the new motors that I put on that screen. Now, with that being said, we did add history. We added some alarming. So if I make this this toggle, if I make this go back to false and then back to true, this is going to trigger an alarm. So I'll see one alarm come in on here. I think I put the alarm on that one. So this is the alarm is based on that. And then if I go here to charts, this is where we can actually go and see the history. So all the motors are logging. Here's the realistic values they're logging. I can bring them in. I haven't been logging very long, so you guys can do the same thing. Look at the chart. If I'm looking at the last 8 minutes of data, I could zoom into it here. I can easily do X traces on those values. We can do ranges, see what the statistics on the range, like what the average standard deviation is on that. We can add notes. So if I add a note here, here is a note. Right, all of you can be able to see that note there as well. Plus, we can go do a lot of configuration in terms of adding pens and axes and plots and really configuring how you want that chart to look. So very ad hoc, very easy. Now you can make a time series chart where they don't have this control, but there's a lot of power that's there. On the alarms, you can see the machine fault that's happening here. So it's based on that Boolean. We toggle that. That's going to bring in that alarm, and I can then go and see the status of this. Come in here, I can come and acknowledge it, and you see on your side that it is now, it went to being acknowledged on there. And so real easy to, again, these are built-in things to look at that data a lot further. Now, a couple more things I want to point out with this, and I hope you're seeing the power of that, and we're just scratching the surface in terms of what's possible. As I mentioned with the Ignition Exchange, you can, I don't have a lot of time to really do it here, but you can go and download this alarm analysis dashboard, and this basically just runs SQL queries and runs any kind of query you want against that database. And you could develop any name query that you'd like and run and bring in data to a screen. So that's what this alarm analysis dashboard is in that demo project that I was showing earlier. You can easily download from the Exchange, import in your project, and you can take advantage of it. It's real simple to do so. What that's taking advantage of is under configuration, is it is doing alarm history. So I'm going to go in real quick, and over here under the configuration section, we've got a bunch of alarming configurations. The journal is where I can create a journal profile. So I'm going to go and log this to our SQL database, that MySQL database. So now those alarm events are being logged historically in there. I can also do notification. So I already have a notification I already have, I connected this to an email. So I'm going to do a email notification. I'm going to call it email. And I'm going to use our SMTP profile here. So I'll use this email, and we'll just keep it all like the default there for now. And I'm going to go ahead and create that. So now I've got alarm notification. Now the way this works is we have to have a user. So I'm going to go and add a user to the system so that I could actually get a, I'm going to add a user, call it mailinator. So we'll go fast here, mailinator user. And I'm going to simply put in a contact information, which is going to be email, which is, I'm going to use mailinator here. So it's ignitionalarm@mailinator.com. So we'll save that. So that is the email. So I've got this in there, add the user. So now I've got a user with email with the contact information. What I'll do now is create, we call an on-call roster. So I'll create a roster. I'll call it just roster. And I'll go and add that one person, then mailinator user, to that roster, save it. So now I've got the user in a roster. The last piece to do would be then to go in and configure what we call alarm notification pipeline. So a pipeline that's going to hook up the alarm to people. So I'm going to come in here just so I can see this. I'll do a quick delay for 10 seconds, and then after that I will then do notification, and I'll notify over here. I will notify through email, and the contacts is going to be the roster contacts. And so real simple to do, and we're going to get this message coming out. Now I could, with alarm pipeline, we could have notify multiple times. We can create any kind of logic we want for how the notification, do escalation here, all sorts of fun things. But I'm just going to keep this, save that. And the last thing I'll do, since I have that alarm, is, for this case, I'd ask you guys to please not mess with the tag while I do this this demo. But if I go in here on this alarm, I'm going to come down here to the bottom and say on the active, when it goes active, it's going to go into the alarms pipeline that we just created. So I can actually notify somebody when that thing occurs. So that's it. We're going to come back into the web interface. Let's go to the demo, and I'll turn this off so we can see this. I'm going to go to the status page of Ignition and go to the alarm pipelines here, alarm notification pipelines, and you'll see that there's the pipeline. There's nothing in there right now, but if I make this tag go true, it's going to be active. It's now in that delay block. We're in the delay block for 10 seconds, and then once that is, as you see, it counts up. Once it goes past the 10 seconds, it's going to send the message out. So now it's notifying that user. There, it's only doing one. Once it's done, evaluation is complete, and then it will drop out of that pipeline. So if I come over here, let's start this up. You can see there's my Ignition alarm notification. Here's the email for that. I can come here and see that this is the kind of default message. And we can customize the message and the from address and all that stuff. But here you can see the email that just came through for that alarm. So again, really, really easy to configure, all these things within Ignition, and there's so much more that's possible. There's a lot of other things that are, as we talked about earlier, that can be configured, but hopefully it gives you a sense of some of the possibilities. The last thing I want to point out is that, from a screen perspective, if you wanted to, here on this alarm, I could easily change the set point of that alarm. I could easily enable and disable this alarm. There's all sorts of things that are possible. So as an example, I can put a toggle switch on here in this top right, and I can bind this to the enable property of the alarm. And so I can actually physically disable that alarm. Let me go ahead and save it. So let's go back to the application, and get that pushed through. Did I save it? There we go. And so the idea is that if I were to set that thing to false, let me go ahead and disable the alarm from the screen. If I disable that alarm, essentially it's going to be disabled. So you won't even see it in the alarm screen. So you could change set points, you can change the pipeline, you can enable, disable the alarm, you can do all sorts of fun stuff really, really easily with that. And so if I enable it again, of course, now it's back into the alarm status. So again, hopefully that gives you a good sense of some of the things that are possible with it. And now there's not a whole lot of time left, but we can certainly open up to any questions that you have. I'll take a look at the chat here, and you always can certainly get a deeper dive, a personal dive demo within Ignition on your side. So let's take a look at some of the questions here. And the one question here is, are all PLC drivers included, or do we need to order separately? No, all the PLC drivers that we talked about are included in Ignition platform. So you don't have to worry about while they're modules, they're all included in the platform itself. So you don't have to worry about which ones you get. It's all going to be in there for that. Good. That's a good question. Another question is differences between Windows and Linux installations. Is one better than the other for operational environments? Certainly, I mean, the performance of Ignition, it really, they're pretty equal on different operating systems. Works well in Windows and Linux. A lot of people prefer Linux environments just because they can have a much more limited or controlled Linux kernel. And we have seen that Linux systems run a lot longer without having to be restarted or with any issues. For example, with Windows, we've seen some of what they call the ephemeral ports that have run out after some time, and you have to restart the server. And there's also maintenance concerns. So people prefer Linux out there, but really it's your personal preference on that. How long can logs be saved? So logs can be saved for as long as you have disk, really. We save again all that to the SQL database. And it's the database. It's whatever database you want, and you get to go in there and use the archiving and the different tools they have for backups. And really, it could be a very scalable. You have people logging data for many, many years, and totally up to you and how you want that to work. So the question is, what is the Ignition Edge interaction? So Ignition Edge, they're exactly the same code base. The difference is a license, so that we can limit the functionality of Ignition for that edge of network functionality, keep that cost really, really low for that. And Edge is really designed to work with the central Ignition server, right? Connect up to it through MQTT or our gateway network. So that's really, it's the same code base, just a limited, addition, if you will, from a license standpoint, so that it's you can handle a bigger distributed architecture. And a good question here from somebody else is that what is there background programming? What's the language? I totally glossed over that in terms of the demo. There definitely is a scripting built into Ignition. It's very well integrated in the system. We use Python, so you can actually go onto like buttons and various things like that, or you can configure a script. And we use Python, and there are over in Ignition, we have over 300 or 400 scripting functions on how to do things really easily and quickly, as you can see with this list, from database functions to tag functions and so on. It's here. You can also do it within timer scripts on the gateway. You can do tag change scripts. You can do scripting in alarm notification pipelines. We got SFCs that use scripting. It's very well integrated in there, and you could build your own scripting functions if you'd like to as well. Again, I'd encourage you to take a look at the Inductive University so you can see the different ways that you can leverage scripting and what's possible there. There was a question here about migrating SciTech over to the tags into this. You certainly can. If you can export the tags from other systems to a CSV or some format, we can easily convert that. There's a couple examples of that on the Ignition Exchange, but really easy to do with that. So unfortunately, I think we're out of time here. And again, thank you all for being a part of the presentation. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Autic and of course, to me. So thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the day.